All right. Hey, we are on the writing channel now. And I'm supposed to lean forward. Like someone said, I watched a video and they're like, if you lean forward like this, people watch your video more. What do you think? You think that's a good idea? I am joined tonight by my co-writing partner on an upcoming new project. And I thought we would let you into some inside baseball about how we write books. Especially what we're going to be writing in book 2, because book 1 has just been finished. Should be off to the publisher. And the next thing we're going to write is the space battle scene. But first, let's just check in with everybody and see how everybody's doing. Let's see. Clutch 1141 says, first, you got to get some spaceships and a guy named Wraith. That's a throwback to Galaxy's Edge with Jason and Spock. That's some good writing right there. Virgil, I hear everybody likes Fracture, the latest.
I loved Fracture. Fracture was dope.
And then there's some people jumping in like, I don't get what's going on. I'm like, well, Chungo. Then we have Virgil Klein. I'm glad I hear. I'm all about slamming the throttle. I believe it. Eldridge Fan says, lay it on me. How do you write space battles? All right, Walt, how do you write space battles?
I say, Nick, you should write a space battle.
Well, I know my way around a few space battles from Galaxy's Edge, and I've developed some thoughts. And I also used to play a lot of tactical simulations that were based on the space battle concept. Everybody's heard of role-playing games. Everybody's heard of, moving your little men in tanks around, sand table games and chits and counters and everything like that. But I had the okay, that's us. The Medusa, who had 2 Sakis today, is checking the Twitter channels. So yeah, so we're good. The Medusa says hi to everybody. She's happy to be here. But
can she say it in Japanese?
How do you say it in Japanese?
Well, no, I'm asking if she can say it in Japanese. I know.
No, she's not drunk enough to say it in the Japanese. She'll take a running stab at it. We did spend the afternoon with the Japanese.
Hi, so this name.
What's that one, though? The good evening.
Good evening. Domo arigatou gozaimasu.
That's with my respect, I thank you.
A really obvious one that we've heard of before.
So it's probably for good evening. It's kobanwa.
Kobanwa. Konnichiwa. Kobanwa.
Yeah, konnichiwa is kind of like good morning.
Yeah. Hey, Jay Canada, how you doing, boss? Good to see you. BC Walker says, I've yet to read Space Battles better than the Lensman books. That's interesting. So good the U.S. Navy came calling. Okay, well, that's a good shout out. There's a lot of people who write really good space battle scenes. There's a lot of people who just write space battle scenes. One of the toughest things that you have to compete with in writing a good space battle scene, and Leo says hello to the elegant Medusa, or Medusa the Elegant.
Hi, Leo.
She says hi, back at you. She doesn't say Ohio. She says hi, back at.
Ohio would be hello in Japanese.
Ohio. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, she's working it. She's working it.
One of the things that you're going to have as a writer is you're going to have that you're going to be competing a lot with movies and television which have depicted space battles. And maybe that's the kind of space battle you want to write. I think the first thing to establish about writing a space battle that you want to talk about off the bat is you want to talk about what kind of space battle you're going to write. Now, like I said, when I first was a kid and I walked into a game store, they were playing this crazy game called Starfleet Battles, which was a tactical military simulation of Star Trek, but just with ships shooting at each other. So that's kind of what I came out of. I also played a game called Starfire, which was a simplified version with a lot more ships and stuff like that. David Weber, who a lot of you know and read his books, he actually got his start writing Starfire fan fiction, for want of a better term. And he did so good at it, they offered him to write their novels in their universe. And that was kind of before he was anybody. And you could actually make the case. David Crow, you don't have to, if you're on the show, you don't have to give us coffee money.
Coffee. I'm drinking coffee. You guys might as well.
I have drank enough coffee today. Not only did I have a morning coffee, and not only did I have part of the Medusa's morning coffee, but then I went on to have a matcha green tea while the Medusa was working on her second bottle of sake, because she was telling me how great matcha green tea is for you. So I pounded that, high caffeine level. Then I went down to that place I took you to down at the beach, where
that little coffee shop.
Yeah, and I had one of those. It's called Black Dot. It's Vietnamese coffee. And then I bought some of their beans, which are like basically distilling crack. So I'm in on it, man.
Nice.
But David Weber could be rightly perceived as one of the grandfathers of space battle fiction. That's primarily what he works in. And obviously, because the amount of books that he's been offered by Bain and other publishers and the contracts that he's written, he's established himself as pretty good at writing that. And when you look at the old Starfire game, that's what he came out of. And I have a tendency to think that generally he writes along those lines. I got to hang out with him one weekend and I was talking to him about that. And that was very interesting. So, hey, Leo, thank you so much for supporting the channel. We do space battles for coffee and tacos. That is true. This channel is all about the coffee and tacos. Speaking of channel, we have a store now, chaosactual.com. Did you send me a link? Were you going to send me a link, or I can make it?
Yeah, but I can put it in the chat for everybody.
You put it in the chat.
I'm going to put it in the chat.
And we just put in a new Coffee and Violence coffee cup that has the OG Space Marine of all time book cover. So if you need a new coffee cup and you want to have something to spark conversation around the office, look at the Coffee and Violence coffee cup. And also feel free to avail yourself of any other shirts or smart things that will probably get you a visit from HR. Chaosactual.com. That's chapsactual.com.
I'm working.
I don't know.
I'm working. I don't.
Let's all not look up chapsactual.com. I'm fairly sure it's going to get wet and wild.
Yeah, I'm just gonna copy and paste now, because like I
So
said,
jumping in, one of the things that I would say is, like, what kind of Space Marine battle are you going to write? So let's just name some. What kind of space battles are there, Walt?
Well, you have fleet engagement, you have orbital assault, you have dogfighting. Right. Definitely not Nick and Chaps like the chat is talking about. But like you have to determine, I think, when you're dealing with a space battle, what kind of technology you're dealing with. Because like if you're looking at something like Star Wars, I mean, that whole genre was meant to emulate World War II in space. So they wanted the dogfights, they wanted like all that jazz. But if you look at like modern military engagements and how we do things with that, I could see it more like how the Aliens universe does space battles, where they don't have ships engaging each other. They have ships basically showing up to a planet and pounding the crap out of it. And if they have to drop fighters or drop ships or something like that, that's something that happens from orbital to atmosphere and then back to orbital. All the battle stuff happens in the atmosphere because the plane can maneuver in the air and have dynamics and stuff like that without if you look at something like Battlestar Galactica, even back in the 80s, they understood what flying a fighter in space was all about, because the fighter didn't bank like a World War II Spitfire. They had to actually use a thruster to aim the ship in the direction they wanted to go, and then fire the main engine while firing angling thrusters to get it in line. Yeah,
they really captured that in the second series. That was really cool. The interesting thing is Battlestar Galactica is a really good representation of fighter and carrier battles.
Yeah.
So that definitely, you could see like how in Hollywood, just coming out of the sort of World War II movie, the last of the big ones like Midway, they were like, okay, let's do a space version of Midway. Carrier groups basically never ever seeing each other.
Yep.
And just sending out waves of fighters to destroy each other. So that's a really good one. I think where Star Wars is another kind of fleet battle, where it excels is it has capital ships of the big ships
Yep.
Basically cruiser and above. Below that is light cruiser, and that's maybe something we should talk about. Like, if we're going to use the naval classification of ships, it basically goes escorts, frigates, destroyers, light cruisers, cruisers. Now we're into capital ships, cruisers, battle cruisers, battleships, dreadnoughts, and then carriers.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how, like, if you kind of like, and what I wanted to do tonight was just like give a primer course to somebody who's like, just like we do with the military science fiction. Hey, I don't know anything about this, but I want to write it. How do I jump in and get started? So the first step that I might say in trying to, get into it is like, don't be afraid to look at movies and TV and figure out, like Walt was saying, whether it's Aliens or Battlestar Galactica or Star Trek. Now, Star Trek is really stayed away from fighters. Star Trek was the classic ship versus ship kind of combat, which is much more, and it was very indicative if you saw Wrath of Khan 2, was much more, well, there's only one Wrath of Khan. There's Star Trek 2.
There's Star Trek 2.
One Wrath of Khan. And that's probably one of the best science fiction space battles movies ever. As in like a ship versus a ship. Basically just like the Patrick O'Brien novels of Master and Commander and Horatio Hornblower and things like that. Two ships fighting out, none of these fighters and everything like that. And when we have fighters and everything like that, you better pick, like, is this going to be dogfights? Is this going to be bombing runs? What do I know about aviation? How does aviation apply to this and kind of stuff like that? That's something you might need to research. And by research, I mean watch Top Gun. It's not that hard. Like, if you're going to write a space battle movie or like with fighters, you're probably not like, no, very few of us are ever going to fly an F-18 Super Hornet. But you can generally watch movies like that, and then you can science fictionalize it to how that you need it. And then you might find some friends who are either science nerds or, fans of these kind of books, and they might come in and say, well, this would happen, that wouldn't happen, and everything like that. One of the brilliant things that Jason Ensbach and I did at the beginning of Galaxy's Edge, because we initially we just wanted to write a very Star Wars style universe, and that makes no sense. Like, from a science perspective, it doesn't add up. And people initially came at us, well, what about this and the ratio and thrust and blasters? And there's no sound in space. And we said, we're just having fun. This is a Star Wars style universe. Like, if you want that hard SF, go there. And then once we kind of told people, like, you can just enjoy this at this goofy World War II in space kind of level, then people was like, oh, okay, I don't have to be technically accurate. I mean, you're always going to get those people, but just decide how deep you want to go in on this. And I would also say, I've wanted to, for a long time, wanted to write a near future real world space conflict with basically killer satellites and rudimentary spaceships and small attack craft trying to kill each other above North America and China in space. Because if you understand that, like, whoever controls the region above your country basically could now drop rocks on your country and kill you. Did you know that in the Cold War, we had these very super secret radar stations? And what they did is every time the Soviets flew a satellite over us, they basically pointed a bunch of lasers at it, and the cameras didn't work. So like that, they understood, that full spectrum dominance means you've got to control the ground, you've got to control the air, you've got to control space. And those are some of the things that you can bring into this kind of thing. But the first thing you're going to need to decide is, like, and let's break it down for you. You can write a Star Wars style battle. So that's big ships and fighters fighting each other. Yep. You can write a carrier battle. That's fighters basically trying to destroy each other, then go destroy the enemy ship. You can write a Star Trek style battle, big ships fighting it out. You can write what basically Walt and I are doing in our new series, which is called War Hulk Marines, where we've decided, and I think that's what we'll dive into now and talk about. And what we wanted to do in this portion is we just wanted to talk about that because we need to talk about it with each other, because we're going to start writing that book and we need to be on the same sheet of music. And I thought, well, why not turn on it? Because here's a question people ask me repeatedly. how do you write and work with somebody else? And you've heard my lecture. You probably shouldn't. You probably don't. But like Jason and I and Walt and I know these people really well. We have done a lot of work together already. Walt has written extensively in the Forgotten Ruin universe and the Galaxy's Edge universe. He understands it. Jason understands it. These are like, it took a lot to be able to work with other people. These are people that I work with. So now, just like I would do with Jason and Galaxy's Edge, Jason and I will sometimes do like a couple of weeks of like talking on the phone every other afternoon for 2 to 4 hours, trying to figure out the beats, trying to figure out how it works, running plot lines by each other, having the other guy come in and say, well, wouldn't it be great if this is happening? We use the yes and formula, which is like we try to build on it and not shoot each other down. Jay Canada, thank you for supporting the channel. $20. The wife says, more matcha for the Medusa. That is true. The Medusa is on like a huge matcha kick after she read about how absolutely great for you matcha is. So she's trying to live forever. But if you've met her, she looks about 22 and she's not. Probably a vampire or some sort of elder lich lord. I don't know. She's easy on the eyes and she's got nice gams. So you have to decide what you're going to write. So in what Walt and I are writing, we are basically writing an alien style universe meets Warhammer 40K. So what does that mean? What does that mean to you, Walt?
So, originally we had that conversation where it's like we could mix both of these together, and then we also said, like, what if we took the horror aspect of that and this other thing over here, which we won't tell anybody about yet because
that's a secret.
And then we amped it up to 11. So like this should be more about the story should be more about regular dudes facing existential dread and fighting kind of like whacked out circumstances, kind of like we saw in the James Cameron Aliens. But at the same time, I mean, at the I don't want to say that because that's just gonna ruin things. But like, we get to a point when we get to the story in book 2 where now you have all these ships surrounding the problem,
right?
And it's kind of like a Cuban Missile Crisis, like you got the United Colonies ships going, hey, back off, we're here first. And then you have the other side going, no, you back off, that ship actually belongs to us. And meanwhile, the people on the actual problem are saying, we can't let either one of these get a hold of us. Right. And it's so like, at what point, do we want, a like a big World War II style, with like dogfighting? It didn't seem like that kind of thing. It seemed more like, like what you were talking about earlier, the way that Aliens does it, the way that Starfleet Battles does it, where they're going to use planetary bodies, magnetic anomalies, pulsars, like all this crazy stuff that exists in the universe to kind of play hide and go seek with these other ships. And
in warfare, we would call that the terrain. Like every battle is fought on a terrain. And it turns out terrain is really important. Like you would be surprised, like even a dip or a rise in the ground you can have these great battles where everybody's lined up and everybody's doing things and you got these plans, everything like that. And what you'll find in you could look at Rourke's Drift with the Zulus. You can find that terrain can absolutely jack up your enemy. Okay, well, how do we bring terrain to space? All the things Walt's talking about.
Yep. And Mr. B.C. Walker earlier in the show said, Legend of Galactic Heroes, despite being a space-focused and fleet-focused space opera, uses Napoleonic land warfare as its model to base its action upon. It's weird.
Exactly. And he's absolutely right. Right there is just as you get into this, approach it and say, okay, what kind of battle am I going to write? And yes, you can look at Thermopylae, you can look at Napoleonic era, you can look at mechanized warfare in World War II, you can look at the GWAT, you can say, let's pretend all the soldiers and units are ships. What does that look like? How do I need to justify that? Especially if this is an area that you've been really fascinated about. You're absolutely right. Hannibal was a master of terrain, Leo. So now we have to assess, like, how are we going to adjudicate this fight? And one of the amateur mistakes that a writer can make is the Ray thing, where you've got your cool, let's call him Captain Awesome of the USS Taco. Captain Awesome does everything great. The USS Taco has like the best space laders. It has the Zorgon death gun. It's faster than any ship alive. It can teleport, and it makes like every workstation has an espresso machine. And all the girls wear mini skirts and look attractive, and all the guys are chads.
Where's this Navy? Where can I search?
Exactly. Where is this Navy, and how boring is that novel? Because now let's just back up. Okay, we saw that in Star Wars, right? We had a character that could do everything, and it was boring. I'll take you now to a fleet movie, a space fleet movie that was awesome because everybody was a screw up, and they used ingenuity and tactical brilliance to win the battle. Do you know what movie I'm talking about?
Is it Wing Commander?
No, it's Up Periscope.
Oh, okay.
You ever seen Up Periscope? But
Yeah.
Wing Commander, were they all screw ups in Wing Commander?
Yeah, they were.
Are they goofy?
Yeah, it was really goofy.
I expected more out of Wing Commander. First off, I'm shocked that there's even a Wing Commander movie.
Oh, God. It was 1992, 94?
Yeah.
When was that?
All I know is that the OG Mortal Kombat movie is way better than any Mortal Kombat movie that's ever made.
The main character was like Freddie Prinze Jr.
Oh, my gosh. Up Periscope.
1999.
Up Periscope is a great movie where you don't have a crew of chads. You have a bunch of guys who are kind of weird, but it turns out they're gifted, and they want to win, and they have a leader that unites them in that goal, which now you understand a lot. Now, what we have out of that, if we were to take that into space, is we now have like drama, we have conflict, and like if Captain Awesome and the USS Taco and the Chads and the Bettys on every port are having espresso and everything's going great for them, and the Slorgon come in and they're stupid and dumb, and their lasers are ineffectual against our shields. This is not going to be a great movie. And yes, Starblazer Space Battleship Yamato is awesome. The scene that Walt showed me where they redid it, the Japanese, oh man,
Live
like
action.
I don't know, like you watch that scene and you're like, I got feels.
I mean, I have a set of like
When they fire the wave
crazy-
motion gun.
right? I have a set of like crazy, super awesome studio headphones, and like I put those on to rewatch that at one point, and it was, I mean, like I could feel my feelings rattle, like when it shakes off all the dirt and composite and stuff like that.
But man, they captured how important and what a gamble it was to fire this weapon. And so that's what we're looking for. And don't be afraid to watch all these things, steal from these things. You're not going to plagiarize.
And
you're
then
going to take something and you're going to make it your own.
100%. And like one of the big things that I think is going to make book 2 very, very interesting is that the ship that the main characters are fighting from, they have a for lack of a better term, like a deus ex machina. They have something that makes them better than every ship that's there, even though the ship is slower, it's older, the weapons aren't meant for ship to ship combat. Like they have nothing else that could help them except this one thing. But if they use it, they're screwed.
Right.
And like, because the problem that was on the ship during the first book, if they do this one thing in the second book during the fleet battle, that will give them an edge over everybody else. It could mean like the end of everything. So
exactly. So you want to create this dramatic structure. They talk about these crews and everything like that. Eldritch Fan asks a perfectly timely question, which is the next step of this short little masterclass. No masters were actually involved of how to do this. And he says, space is really, really big. I added a second really because it is. How far should sensors reach and weapons shoot? Could covering that space quickly be good use for fighter craft? Okay. You have now asked a really awesome question. And when you're dealing with space battles, this can get all very overwhelming. We learned this in the military. A lot of it can all be very overwhelming. We distill things down to concepts that we can rely on and understand. So in the infantry and in everybody else, there is shoot, move, and communicate. So all that is like you're going to shoot guns, you're going to move, and then you're going to communicate with the other guys that are like section of your half. Listen, I'm going to shoot. You run forward. Okay, we're down. I'm going to move forward. You shoot, and you can get close on the enemy. You can use that for ship-to-ship tactics. But I was thinking about that as I was preparing for this master class, and I was thinking, okay, here's how I would adjudicate or organize as a writer a space battle, and it's with the question that was, how far do the sensors work? How far do the weapons shoot? All this kind of stuff. Okay, before I tell you the acronym I came up with and why it's brilliant and why I'm a genius and you should use it, you're gonna laugh when I actually tell you what it is and why what I just said was a joke. I want to talk about what we decided to do, which is we decided to go ahead and do a type of warfare where the ships are very dangerous to each other at different phases. That explains why we have to use Space Marines, because, and again, if you're going to work on your property and it's going to be called fighter battles, don't suddenly start writing about Space Marines. If it's going to be like the Captain's Quest, don't start writing about Space Marines. If it's going to be about Space Marines, pick a title and pick an image that says Space Marine. If it's a fighter book, fighter book. If it's two ships blasting at each other, you got to pick something like that. And I would just say, like, I know that might be difficult. Like, you might want to write something else, or something else might become attractive or whatever, but you got to stay with what you're going to advocate in the battle, is how this battle is going to be, as what we would call prosecuted by you, the writer, in which, like a complete lunatic, you're going to sit down with your toys in the bathtub and make them fight. And then you're going to relate that to everybody like you're a completely sane person.
I totally did not do that on Sunday.
Exactly. So in our book, what happens is we have these things called war hulks. Could you describe a war hulk for everybody while I step away from the camera for just a moment?
Yeah, so Warhawks are kind of like these gigantic space-based weapons platforms. Somebody mentioned the battleship Yamato a little while ago. Take one of those and have it appear as though it's on crack, or somebody decided to just weld extra crap on it all over the place. Like the ship got a disease, but it's still dangerous, and that's kind of like what these giant war hulks are, and their original intent with the government that owns them and kind of fielded them was as a planet pacification ship. You know, these things would show up with divisions of their particular flavor of troops, and they would deploy those troops down onto the planet after they'd used kind of like planet pacification munitions type of deal. So dropping heavy bombardment, maybe nukes, plus a whole bunch of other things like rods from God, or whatever fictional thing you wanted to put in there. But these war hulks were sent as colony killers. And then some of them, of course, were transitioned to fight ship to ship. But then everybody kind of decided in the whole in the whole span of the galaxy between, the main system and then like all these different colonies that were looking for their independence, that these big ships blasting away with each other, blasting away against each other, were just too expensive to keep doing. So, I mean, hence the Warhawk Marines, you have people, when these ships get within range of each other, they don't commit to a fighter battle or just start lasing each other. They might use a beam weapon to cripple a ship, slow it down so it can't do what it's got to do to get away, so on. But then you deploy Marines onto the enemy ship, so you do boarding action to take control. And that's kind of where the second book will end up, you'll have your initial engagement where everybody kind of fights it out for a minute, and then they're like, if this keeps up this way, we're going to lose everything we came here for, so let's board this thing. And then, of course, boarding it is not going to help anybody either, because there are other things going on that boat.
Exactly. So what we want to do, okay, so we have this war hulk. It's this giant Leviathan, ugly, bureaucratic slave ship full of brutal 40K type warriors. Okay. Now we've got our aliens, Marines, from these like plucky colonies. They're technologically advanced. They've gotten away from Earth. They're more like the frontier. They're technocratic. They're ruled by the corporations. They've got these young kids who are willing to jock up, put on armor, and go out and, smoke Xenos and explore stuff and fight, local populations. But part of what they're tasked to is occasionally boarding these old war hulks from the enemy system. So with respect of how we adjudicate a space battle, we have a giant ship coming after some smaller ships. Now, we said, okay, since we don't want to make, Captain Taco and the USS Awesome, or Captain Wonderful and the Captain Chad and the USS Taco and the espresso machines and everything, we have to give everybody strengths, and we have to give everybody disadvantages. Now, we don't want to give each side the same strength, because that's kind of weird. So with the war hulks, what we said is these things are impossible to smoke. They have way too much armor. They're way too heavily armed. They're very powerful, and they have like almost like 3 brigades worth of like troops. So what's a brigade? A brigade is generally 4 battalions, sometimes 5. A battalion is 1,200 guys. So a brigade is about, correct me if I'm wrong, 82nd man. A battalion is 500 guys?
Roughly, yeah. Each
No.
company. So each
company is
company,
100 guys.
100 guys.
There's
Alpha,
4
Bravo,
companies.
Charlie, Echo. 5 companies.
Oh yeah. So there's basically 500 guys plus headquarters. So now you have 1 battalion of those guys. So a brigade is times 5. Let's say times 3. So you have 1,500 guys, and you have about 3 brigades. So now you go times 3. So now you're at about 4,500 guys. And our Warhawk Marines, just like the Marines in real life, don't have the numbers. The Army has 1 million people. The Marines have 100,000 people. What is it? Is it 13%? Wait.
Yeah, it's very small.
30% of which are the actual trigger pullers.
Yep.
The other 70% are air wing, and take care of the Marines. Same thing in the Army. Like generally it's for every 1 guy that you have, it takes 7 to support. So again, don't come to me for math. Come to me for writing advice at your own peril. So that's the numbers that we have. And we said, okay, the Marines, the United Colonies, they have those more alien style ships. If you go back and read how James Cameron wanted that design, he said, I want it to look like an automatic weapon moving through space.
Yep.
So it's synth, it's black, it's deadly. All the weapons are forward. It doesn't look like once we, as if we paint the picture right, these things look like credit cards going up against a whale. We want to visualize what the impact of this is. Like the credit cards are not going to beat the whale, but because we're advocating for the credit cards, we have to give them some strengths. So we gave them technology. Now here's the problem. Their ships can't stand up to damage. They can't really get close to a Warhawk. So they have to find ways to board it with Marines who are already outnumbered, but have better weapons, technology, better training because they're not slaves, tactics. And they basically have invented a system where they board these ships really quickly. They insert, hull cracker munitions and just basically try to get the ship to explode and then get off of it. That's kind of, I would say, the genesis of that would be the UCMS Marine Corps mission. Board a ship, attach explosives, and get off. We're not there to capture it. We're not there to kill everybody. All that kind of, they'd like to find out those things. We give them an opportunity to in the first book. So we have to advocate those tactics. So if we're fighting a space battle between these two people, here's what it looks like. Basically, you can't damage these Warhawks. You can shoot at them. They have massive, their guns are all oriented out to the side, like they're old space galleons, because on their forward gun, which is just like the Yamamoto in what's its face, that's their basically planet killer weapon. It's not good for ship to ship stuff. So what we then step over to the Marines and we say, okay, what this allows them to do, because they're like, it's a football game, they're analyzing their enemy's tactics and developing their equipment. They're like, guess what? We can attack from the forward arc. We can basically go at them as fast as we can, straight at them, because they really don't have a lot of weapons that fire forward. Now, what could happen if we were playing out a space battle? Well, the Warhawk could just go E, and now it's all the side guns are here. And now these guys are flying right at it. They're like, shit, and they get shot to pieces. So we had to invent some tactics for that. And basically what we said is like, okay, the Martians, who are the Warhawk guys, they can basically, they can hit hard, and it's really hard to hurt them. But they're kind of slow and stupid and blind. The Marines can't stand up to much and don't have the resources, but they're smart about how they attack. And now we can fight a space battle. So what is, knowing that stuff, how do you fight a space battle, Walt?
So the first thing that the Marines are going to do when they're closing in is they're going to, like in the initial, so if you were a part of our lovely Kickstarter, of which we had, roughly about 40 people that jumped in and supported us to do some cool, like, what would you call that? Like ETS paperwork?
Yeah. Basically, we created like fake discharge papers for them from the Corps. And then Walt was nice enough to go through and give them a, howbeit colorful career. And the thing that we found that shocked us is that the people mostly wanted the dishonorable discharge papers. Yeah,
which was funny is that, but like, the people who supported us in that already got the short story that is kind of like a prequel to this. And you find out that the Marines have already tried to board this ship 2 times before we even get to the main story. And what they've done is they've tried only to drop in Marine Special Forces, and it's failed twice. So now, the powers that be, the corporations, are like, well, that didn't work. The best of our best didn't work. So why don't we take our kind of okay is good enough forces and throw them on the ship?
Hey, that was the motto of my unit back in the military. Kind of okay and basically good enough.
Good enough. Yep. Why don't we throw them on the ship, but just do it with a lot more people?
Yeah.
So like, but when they enter and get toward the Warhawk, things go very bad because the Warhawk has already been boarded twice. So now that they kind of know what to look for, nobody told these incoming Marines that was happening.
Right.
So coming into, if a new unit was coming in or a new ship coming in to try and take out this Warhawk, they would definitely create a sense of shadow. So try to cloak the ship, to get into position, to either force the ship into a new direction of their choosing, into oncoming ships that can control the battle space. And like somebody said earlier, space is huge. So you're going to do things like create false sensor images. You're going to do things like creating actual firing munitions out there that just hang in space and wait. And when the thing gets close enough, it refers back to the main boat and says,
those would be effectively, like in land warfare, those would be mines.
Those would be mines.
You're going to mine the battlefield, and then you're going to let them run into it.
And then when they take a little bit of damage, because this Warhawk is tremendous. It's bigger than a city. So now when you meet the Warhawk in the first book, a lot of the personnel are gone. And you find out that like the personnel that should have been on that ship just weren't for reasons. But a fully for regions. But a fully staffed Warhulk should be 50,000 people. So this is not something that you throw out into space lightly.
No,
but
this is a city in space.
Yeah,
and you're sending in a platoon strength element.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So, but the what do you call it? You're going to create conditions that funnel the ship into an area of your choosing, so you can take it down. Right. So a great analogy for this, and you see this during some actions during World War II, some in later fleet battles and stuff like that. You see it a lot with things like the Coast Guard or the Navy in their treatment of pirates. So you're going to basically create situations to funnel this and get them to think that they're running into a position of strength, and they run smack dab into the rest of your fleet, getting ready to pound them.
Right.
So, that's probably the situation we're looking at for this book you're going to have a running battle, and it's going to seem like, we slipped them that time, and we slipped them that time, and blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, they realize that they're in a lot of trouble. And now you have two basically militaries dropping onto this boat looking to take it.
What I liked about Wrath of Khan, which it really captured which Starfleet battles basically, I've heard that like Starfleet battles actually influenced Wrath of Khan, because I was actually dealing with some people. And what was really interesting about that, so if you watch like the ships come and exchange fire and then they fly off, and how Starfleet battles justified that is they're damaged, they're repairing, they're reloading weapons, and then they're going to come back in on each other again.
It's like a joust.
It's like a joust. And you could look at it that way. I think we have this tendency sometimes, like, everybody's going to fly at each other. Everybody's going to shoot each other. One of the things that you have to take into account is, if you want to be good at military fiction, is be cognizant of how much ammunition you have.
Yep.
You do not have an endless mag of wonders.
Yep.
Though I think I gave Sergeant Thor that one time.
With a bag of holding.
Yeah, a bag of holding attached to a 60 with just all the ammo that he could stuff in the bag of holding. As long as he kept it straight, it fed right.
Nice.
And that's magic, and that's goofy. It works for that, but it's not going to work. Like a lot of the guys and ladies who read military science fiction are looking for the authenticity. So you're going to have to take this into account. So when we're doing this kind of battle, like Walt's talking about, like we've identified the strengths, we've identified the weaknesses, and now we've got to tactically give each side its best shot at killing each other. We might do that Tom Clancy style. The USS Stramico, loaded up her weapons. Her Marines were getting ready to deploy. Then I might, page break. I might chapter break. I might just do like, the Martian ship Warhammer of Destiny. The commander ordered them to spin about. He knew, because he'd been through this before, they would attack him to the front. If he could get this ship turned around in time and get his guns to bear on what he thought their likely attack vector was, he had them set up. But they planted a mine and he ran right into it. Now he's lost all the power. Now you run down to the engineering deck and you have like the head maestro of engineering, and his slave army, and they're like, the reactor's overloading. I've got to send some like worthless life forms in there. Like he's whipping these slaves to go in there and fix that thing, or whatever drama that you're creating. This is the interstitial scenes between the exchange of fire that you've developed because of your tactics. And that's bringing now, like when we write these scenes, we're using these scenes to tell everything about the two navies and why they're different. In the case of the Martians, it's a brutalist, almost Soviet style, bureaucratic bunch of people. Life is cheap. The glory of the state is everything. Go into that reactor and die for the greater glory of government. Whereas, and you can imagine that when I paint that scene in your head. Then we go over to the Marines. We're seeing something more out of like Crimson Tide. We're seeing like professional officers They're around a combat information table. They're all about data management, collection, battle. They know they have to deploy these forces. They don't have an endless supply. They also know that they have some very advanced weapons, but they're not maybe sure to use them. Maybe they don't want to go full nuclear right now because that would present problems to space. That would present problems to them. Perhaps they have Marines already downrange in dropships, and they're like, yeah, we can win this with nukes, but those guys will be screwed and we won't be able to recover them. You begin to build all these problems into it. And I'm telling you, as a guy who's done this, you can turn an entire 80,000 word book into one battle.
Yep.
Which is Voodoo Warfare in Strange Company. That is a battle for an LZ. It takes the whole book.
Yep.
You can mine, you can explore, and you can expand. So the acronym that I came up with, or the philosophy that I came up to answer the question of how do you run your sensors? What are your weapon ranges? All this kind of stuff is like, break it down into that shoot, move, and communicate philosophy, and then figure out your weapons. Like, how are you going to shoot? How is the ship going to move? How is it going to communicate? But I would say, here's my brilliant twist on it. Are you ready? It's actually communicate, move, and shoot. So the first chapter is going to be communication. You're going to be setting the stage. You can't just jump into like the shooting. The Zorgons are shooting at Captain Awesome. No one has any grounding so far. Who the hell the Zorgons are, who the hell Captain Ops, they don't know who to root for. You're going to lose your audience right off the bat. So let's start with the communicate. Sir, we got a sensor contact. It's the Zorgons. Captain Awesome turned to the crew of the Taco. These bastards.
Taco.
Everybody's like, yeah, give me an espresso. We hate these government-loving bastards, or whatever drama, okay? And you could write that chapter for the Warhawk people. They're like, it's the colonists and their weak ways of, freedom. Whatever. You're painting this into the communication. Now, what else are we doing in the communication? Sensor scan indicates it's a Leviathan-class warship. That's the one side. The Warhammer, the Martian guys, they could be like, oh, it's 3 of these Liberty-class destroyers. They're marked this and this way. But we also know they optimize these for weapons. We have data specs on 2. We don't know what the third one is. Now you can begin to build in the mystery, the complements, all that kind of stuff. It's here, too, that you could begin to talk about the weapon systems, because the sensors are scanning the enemy ships, and the Leviathan, the Warhawk Leviathan, easy read. It's one giant city. It's got tons of power. It uses energy-based weapons. The colonists, we know, have had to be clever. They've gone like the U.S. has, and I come from the Cold War. We didn't have the troops to fight the Soviets. We had, I think, 9 divisions. The Soviets had something like 40 divisions. The reason you have night vision is because of me. No, because of all the Cold War people. Because what we found in the U.S. Army at that time is that we couldn't fight the Russians in the Fulda Gap, which was where the war was supposed to be, in daylight. They had the numbers. Now, what they didn't have is they didn't have communication. So if you had 4 Russian tanks, only one of them had a comm mast. And that one got the orders, and he gave the hand signals to the others. So guess what the Dragon Gunners did, Walt?
We shot the guys with the mast.
Shot the guy with the mast, and now they shut down.
Do you want to explain to them what a dragon is?
I was not Dragon qualified, but I think you were.
I was a Dragon qualified gunner. Yeah, that's
right.
How old I am.
So what's a Dragon?
So there is a weapon in the Army inventory called a tactically guided, optically sighted, wire-controlled missile, or a tow missile. It's basically a small missile guided by a wire, kind of like the drones are being done in Ukraine now. But this weapon was created in the 60s, fielded in the 70s, used a little bit during the 80s, and in the 90s they were phasing it out. So you got this giant sight on the launcher that you looked through, and wherever you kept the sight on, that's where the missile would go. Right. And like if the tank tried to turn or get away from you, you just followed the tank, and the missile had these little maneuvering rockets that would fire off. And it was funny watching it from the site, because you'd see these like little pop, 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 like all these little explosions around the missile, guiding it to where you're pointing. And then it would hit and blow up, and hopefully you would basically kill that. But it was impossibly huge to carry. It looked like you were carrying a Q-tip for some of the star giants we hope to see in Strange Company 4.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a big thing to have to carry around. So, they did away with it in favor of the Carl Gustav.
Okay. So that's the kind of tactics we're going to use. With communicate, starting first and shoot, move, and communicate, we can now paint the picture of what the hell is going on. Now we can move to the movement phase, where the ships are going to move and close with each other. This is a great time to do drama. This is a great time to do character, because at the end of the sensor phase, Captain Awesome in the USS Taco told, brave Ensign Cutie Pie, she should get down and prepare the, Trilax torpedo, because that's the best way. Whatever you're going to do, someone in the sensors phase, in the communication, because that's what communication is, someone's going to get a mission. In Warhulk, the Marines forward are going to get a mission. We're going to make a run at this ship. When we get close, we're going to kick you out in drop ships, and you're going to board it. That's what happens at the CIC. Now we move to the second chapter, which is the movement phase. Action is happening, but someone at the end of the first chapter got that order. Now in the second chapter, as movement happens, we get to meet that person. We get to meet brave Lieutenant American Pie. And he just loves life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And he's got cornbread and ham and egger and cheese burrito and chicken parm in his unit. And he's going to be like, man, chicken parm's my killer. Cornbread's great. Ham and egger, little weak. You're going to hurt, because we're doing Marine stuff. We're going to get to know these people in the movement phase. So that's a great time to do character. Chapter 1, communication, sensors. We're learning about what's going on in the battle. During the movement phase, we're learning about the people who are about to start taking shots at each other. In the shooting phase, and you could do a few chapters if you wanted of telling who everybody is. I would say get to the action as quick as you can initially. Now we're going to have some attack. Nick, are you hungry? Why? Because I'm salivating? What does that mean? Now we're going to move towards the attack part. And the attack part, or the shoot part, is where we're going to show what I think people in Space Marine. I am always hungry. Yes, that's true. Now we're going to move to the part where I think people really like Space Marine fiction, military science fiction. If you look in the Amazon categories, there's a lot of this. There's colonization, there's space fleet battle, there's alien invasion. There's a lot of like fighting battle, military fiction titles in science fiction. So if you're going to write this, now you're going to move to the communication aspect. I mean the shooting aspect. And the shooting aspect is where you get to invent all this awesome weapon stuff. You get to invent the really cool fighter jets that go screaming in and dropping, ATAC bombs. What's an ATAC bomb? I don't know. You know what? This is a fun game I do. I pick a cool acronym and then I make up what it is. So I'm going to do what is an ATAC bomb? It is a armored tungsten assault charge.
Basically a high yield penetrator.
Exactly. Look how fast I just said it. I didn't even pre-plan that. You can pick fun things like Moabs. It doesn't mean the mother of all bombs. They mean other things, but they just call it that. But you can have, and guys who have been in the military and people who love the military, they really love acronyms, especially if you take the time to justify them and make them set. They love really cool guns. They love chain guns like that's on the Warthog. You can make a space version of that. They love 50 cals. The Navy guys love torpedoes. And now is when you go over onto the Raytheon site and McDonnell Douglas and you begin to just research munitions, and then you spacify them. And now you get to write about when they fire off that 60 gigawatt ATAC from the USS Stramico, the colony ship Stramico. You now get to fictionalize how that's going to hit the enemy and what that's going to do for the mission. You have been told why it's going to be fired. You've been told in the movement part who's going to do the firing. Now in the shooting part, you're going to see it done, and we're going to see how that supports the plot going forward. Does that help the plot? Do you throw in a wrench and be like, oh no, the PDCs, point defense cannons on the Warhawk ship, shot it down as it went in, but they didn't completely kill it, and it creamed the starboard side defense guns and took out the power below deck 67. Now they're having to deal with that. Now you're just exchanging fire and you're having a lot of fun. And honestly, I'm not going to go on much further than that. That is a very good rudimentary primer to jump into how to write a space battle book. If you've probably watched Michael Bay movies. You might have watched Our Star Blazers. You might have watched Robotech, Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, Space 1999, and every other show, and thought, I want to write that. And when we sit down to write, it's fun, but then you get into these things. Well, how do I make it make sense? How do I communicate to the people what I'm seeing in my head? And tonight, that was basically the basic primer that I could give you. And just as Virgil Kane says, Space Claymore, you can take any weapon system that's in existence, from the crossbow to the Claymore to the M4 to the Arbus, and Arbescus, whatever. You could be like Walt and know all the obscure Japanese weapons, and you could spacify that, because that's what Lucas did with the obscure Japanese weapons. He turned them into lightsabers. And lightsabers. It's a light sword, but it's a saber, and it's not actually a saber because the saber's curved and it's a cavalry instrument. But nonetheless, people overlook that because light katana isn't really a thing, and neither is light wakizashi.
Can't deal.
Okay, there were some questions in the chat. Does anybody? We'll call it there, unless Walt, you want to put a button on anything I've said?
No, I mean you pretty much hit the nail on the head.
That's what I do. I to me, everything is a nail.
I mean, hammer. But like,
And as much as we try to get everybody in the unit to call us hammer, they end up calling you brain or stinky.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
What was yours?
I told you the other night.
Yeah, but you didn't tell that.
I wasn't proud of it.
I mean, my first name is Walt, so they, somebody asked me my nickname, and they were like, "What's your nickname?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's Gator." Is that because you like come silently out of the water and snatch somebody and death roll them? I'm like, no, because my first name's Walter, and they decided that Wally Gator.
Wally Gator's the swingingest gator in the swamp.
Yep. And every time I would say it was Gator, somebody would sing that song behind me. I'm like, yeah, that's how that happened.
Mine was Brain.
Mm-hmm. No judgment.
No
judgment. But yeah, I think that getting a bunch of like cool references to fill up your brain, like either reading, something like Master Commander or watching something like The Wrath of Khan, just for the simple thing of Shatner going, Khan, having that in your brain to load up and give you some motivation and act as like a muse can really kind of push you in a direction if you're looking
set you free. It can set you free.
Usually when I write a book, if I need motivation for something, I will grab a song that I think would kind of like play through that scene as it's going on, and just play it in my head and just walk around in circles while my dogs are going, what are you, what are you broken? Are you having a stroke? Why are you walking in circles? But like, I'll just think of that scene and how that music would play through it as like a soundtrack in a movie.
Is it Mandy by Barry Manilow?
It depends on the scene.
Okay.
It depends on the scene. So, although now I'm going to go cue that up. And
Did you watch the skit I told you to watch earlier today?
Yeah.
Does that skit 7 Shades of Wrong or what?
Oh my God. You couldn't do that. You couldn't do that now. People would lose their mind.
But it's true. It's 100% true. And it's not just true because of what it's
back
about.
in business, baby.
Back in business, baby. That's every time I get a paycheck, I just look at the Medusa and say that.
Odd question. If you have a character that is kind of designed to be overpowered, how do you balance that so that you aren't writing Mary Sue? Go ahead.
No, I learned so much from you. You tell me.
Oh, great.
Well, I mean, this is a great question for you because you are a master of the martial arts of the East. And the one thing that I can say that I have understood about your fighting style, because I just do boxing,
Yeah.
is it's all about balance.
Yep.
You can know all the quivering palms of death and, curse of the foot finger. I don't know, the octopus. But everything that you guys do is balance. Boxing is just about brutally slugging the other guy until he coughs up tokens.
Until you see a master strategist who is also a pugilist, somebody like Tyson.
Yeah.
Or I was recently watching this young kid who was training in boxing, and his slip and stick routine was just damn. So hey, Sparky. I
envision that Sparky, who says, "Yo, Joes, I'm listening to you guys from under my new desk doing cable management." I picture the scene from Seinfeld where George builds a nap bed under his desk and sleeps there for most of the day.
Yeah. But one of the best examples of an overpowered character that is not a Mary Sue when he is written correctly is classic Superman. And it nowhere better was it illustrated in several comics, and then in they did a cartoon basically where he goes up against Darkseid, and he has this brilliant soliloquy, and he says, I live every day of my life in terror that one wrong move, one excited utterance, and I could wreck cities. I feel like I'm walking around in a world made of cardboard. And then he says to the main bad guy, Darkseid, he says, but you can take it, can't you, big guy? So what we have here is a rare opportunity for me to really cut loose, and he just trounces this dude, right? But you see the anguish that this character has to live with because he's so overpowered, but so much more powerful than everybody around him. He's a person that, and you see this in a couple of the movies and some of the, especially in the comics, he's a person who had to act like a nerd and wasn't able to play football because he could hurt somebody.
Right.
He was a person who, he never really had a girlfriend coming up. He had people he liked, but his parents would always warn them, you get too excited, something happens, you could break somebody. Yeah. I mean, so when you have somebody that's so powerful and is designed to be that way. So there are characters in the Warhawk Marines that we're writing now. There's a group of characters that kind of resemble that, but then you see what they had to do to earn that ability. And you're just broken after hearing what they did. And it's like, yes, you can fight off all these cosmic horrors, but this is what you had to give in order to get that ability. Yeah. So I really believe that with a character who is super powerful, another great example of this is from the video games back in the early 2010s, The Force Unleashed. It was about a character who was so powerful that basically Vader said, "You will be my secret apprentice." I mean, this is a guy that could use the Force to drag a Star Destroyer out of the air, but he was constantly beaten down because he couldn't get over his own anger, his own resentment over basically letting Vader kill his family and then raise him. So I mean, a lot of times when characters are physically powerful, you can always take that mental angle to do things. You could take the easy way out and be like, oh, kryptonite, here you go, man. You could do that, but that's not as interesting. That's not as it's not as like I tell Nick all the time, I really enjoy reading his stuff because he brings things in from everyday life, and like when you're basically dealing with an overpowered god in your story, it's not something the average person relates to. But what you can relate to, Clark Kent, who is basically like on borrowed time because all these blogs are basically doing away with reporters, is struggling to pay the rent on his New York apartment. And here's the real pain.
I'm sure he'll find a way.
Here's a guy, right? Here's a guy that could basically crush coal in his hand and turn it into diamonds, but he can't do that because he can't explain where they came from.
You can have some other things that are interesting, and that's a great dissertation on the super overpowered character, dealing with the fact that they are the super overpowered character. There's a couple other characters that you can look at. And in fact, every comic book character is basically written with this formula. You're great at everything, you have a problem.
Yep.
You can look at Spider-Man. Spider-Man's defeated by his own problems.
Constantly.
Yeah. The Punisher is a character who cannot be defeated militarily or through grit or determination or will, but he's plagued by his own grief.
Yeah.
And when an enemy understands that, they can mess with him.
Mm-hmm.
Another twist on that is Iron Man.
Oh, God.
Especially Tony Stark. He's the Batman. Tony Stark is Batman for Marvel. He's a millionaire with all the toys, except he's an alcoholic.
Yep.
And he can't overcome himself. And ultimately it destroys him. And that was I'm sure they brought him back a million times, but classically that was such a great thing to do, to realize that you can beat everybody, but you can't beat yourself. Someone mentioned Tyrus Rex. What I did with Tyrus Rex, he's great. He has space Alzheimer's. Live long enough, and you can't distinguish the past from the present. And so as he goes through this life, he's undefeatable because he's relentless and doggedly determined. And it describes him as a very ordinary looking person of middle age. But he's haunted by all the ghosts of 2,000 years. Yeah. Everybody just isn't dead. They're multiple dead times over. And he's having a problem with that. And that, brings him to there's always an argument at the end of book 2 where they say, Lyra was really special to him, but then he just orders her to blow herself up to him. It's just part of the Alzheimer's and part of death is inevitable and everything like that. But you can look at all these. So that's a great question. There were 2 more questions.
Yes.
The Medusa has 2 more questions that people asked because she keeps track of your questions because she's the Medusa that cares.
It was space is really, really big. This is Eldritch fan.
We answered that one.
Oh, how far should? Okay.
Yeah.
And then did you answer? What are your opinions on Gundams and big robot suits?
What are our opinions on Gundams and big robot suits?
Okay.
Well, I mean, we put them in World Marines. So
our opinions are good.
Our opinions are good.
Good.
So the enemy in Warhawk Marines, they have a certain way to deal with that stuff. But the colonists, they're colonists. They sign up for an X number of bid for years for being Marines or Navy or whatever. So they don't want to do a lot of the extreme stuff that this other government does. So instead, when they have to slug it out, they have basically tanks, both walking and with treads. One of the vehicles that gets deposited on the Warhawk is the M68 Hammerhead. It's basically a walking chicken, a walking armored chicken that you drive around or walk around in, and It's got a huge like Gauss cannon, almost like what you might find on a Warthog on one side. And then on the other side, Chicken Go Bert. Yep, we should make a patch. M68 drivers, Chicken Go Bert. But it's got the reverse legs of the chicken and stuff like that. But like, it's not a huge mech. It's not like a BattleTech mech. It's maybe 20 feet tall. But it's got the Gauss cannon on one side, and on the other side, it's got a beam weapon for cutting into ship hulls. And they deposit these things onto the ships. And standard practice is cut through the hull, get the Marines inside if they have vac armor, or fly a shuttle, cut a hole in to fly a shuttle in, and then act as anti-ship batteries on the outside and communications hubs. Because if, like, for example, the crew that comes into the ship that we're dealing with in the story, they have all this gear, and they can hack in. They can open a socket, Nick. They can.
24.
Right. So they can do all this thing with commo and stuff like that. The only problem is the ship is so old they can't connect to any of it.
Yeah. So that's the final lesson I would leave with you tonight. We've probably run out of everybody's time. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like Walt to take over the show permanently, just go ahead and leave it in the comments. And he can teach you how to write better than I can. But we definitely thank you for coming on. Thank you for talking 100%. With us. What Walt was saying there is the best way to end this little class tonight, which is you can do anything you want in science fiction, and that's the fun of it. All you need to do is justify it. And that's like, and I think Walt's a big junkie on research.
Oh, I love research.
Justifying. And what you find is when you really get into these things and you understand these things, you get so much to write about. It's like a gift. So don't be afraid to start researching stuff, looking at stuff. Don't be afraid to steal stuff. Don't be afraid to make stuff up. Make it your own. And you can write. I'll tell you this. This is just a little prediction, a little bold prediction here.
Right.
You can write a better novel than you are even dreaming and imagining about if you just apply what you learned here in this little, video tonight. Save it, watch it again, go to your grandma's house, put it on play repeatedly. Let it run for a few hours so I can get some monetization. Thank you to everybody who supported the channel tonight through Rumble. If you want to jump over there and drop some taco and coffee money, we really appreciate that. We're not monetized on YouTube yet. And we're also on the X. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We hope it was useful to you, and we will be back. I will be back next Tuesday. Maybe just Walt will be back.
Don't get weird.
We'll see you later. Have a great evening.
Have fun, guys. Thanks.